All right, in regard to the agenda, is that under delegations, item 3.1 is deleted. In fact, it was placed on the agenda in error. We cannot receive any additional delegations in regard to that issue because we've just completed the public hearing. We're in second reading and waiting for the results of the municipality's consideration. So we're not in a position to be able to receive that delegation. And so item 3.1 is withdrawn. And also you'll see on table item 6.1. I'd like to add that to the agenda. So 6.1 added and 3.1 deleted.
Move it up.
Second.
Chairperson, I do have a question about the delegation being deleted. I'm not as familiar with the first, second, third reading process. So if you could just clarify for me, so we are still technically in the public hearing process?
We are. Is that we go through, when we have first reading, we can receive delegations, we can hear the public about these issues. When we go into public hearing, we then can hear the public fully in regard to the issues. When we complete the public hearing, it's terminated, and we can no longer receive any information from that point on until the conclusion of the reading process. So right now, we're at second reading, and it's gone out to the local municipalities for consideration, and before we proceed to our next readings, we need to get back from them their view of the context statement. So we're in the process now. We don't have an opportunity to be able to hear any further delegations. So it's simply not legally permitted for us to do that. It's not a question of discretion.
So if I might just follow up, and I appreciate the explanation. I know we're in the agenda section of the meeting, so I don't want to belabor the point, but it would be helpful for me perhaps to get a written explanation from Metro staff, because I fear that I may have crossed this line not understanding the process in terms of some discussions I've had with people.
It's for us to receive as directors this information. There is no possible way that individual directors or individual councillors can prevent citizens from talking to them. I mean, we all understand that citizens will talk to you about issues in your local community, but we are not to receive as a group any kind of submissions to us.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah, I was going to just make the point that when it's gone out to all the cities, and presumably there's a public process there, so we're going to get input at that in our capacities as city mayors or councils.
Exactly. Cities are fully open to receive information. So Vancouver Council, for instance, when you're sitting as a councillor, can receive further information if they choose to do so.
Okay.
We can't, as a group, receive any further information. So it's that technical aspect. As a group, we can't receive it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, Director Moore. Yes. UBC. Well, I think you're a stranger in a strange land.
That's what I understand. It's strangers to do.
No, I said you're in the same position as the rest of the directors. You can't receive any information as a director, but the individual plans as they go to your local municipalities are subject to whatever process the local municipality chooses to take. So there's some dichotomy that happens here, you know, in the sense that you can hear things as a councillor that you can't hear as a director.
So, okay, that, I guess if I clarify that, since I sit only as a director, I'm not here.
Exactly. And I have Director McLean and Director Trusty.
I just wanted to, if memory serves me, there was a time based on case law when we couldn't receive any information even from staff after a public hearing, which was overturned on appeal, I believe, maybe West Vancouver. So I guess the question that we have been receiving a lot of information. I haven't responded to it, but some members obviously have, some directors have obviously asked staff for clarification. Are we allowed to receive that information? We have received emails. Are we allowed to discuss it at this, or I guess at the
We're permitted to discuss information that's provided by the individual directors or by staff, in the sense that we're permitted to ask staff questions and to gain information from staff and to debate the issues around the table and ask staff to respond to issues. We're just not permitted to hear any third parties in relation to this matter.
Okay, so if I were to say I received this email and I'm not understanding exactly what it means because it seems in contradiction with our staff's position, then what is the direction that we should take for the meeting?
I think anyone should go back to Ms. DeMarco in order to get any clarification on the information. And Ms. DeMarco will check with Ms. Vedelson to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the public hearing process and reading.
Thank you.
Dr. Trustman?
Clarification, there are some organizations who are applying to be a peer delegation to council meetings. And they are coming there very clearly stated intention to speak about the regional growth strategy plan, not as it applies to the specific city, but metro. Is that something that we are allowed to hear at council?
Ms. Vedelson has advised me that it's open for you to hear whatever submissions you choose to hear. But I'll ask her to come forward. Ms. Vedelson, you come forward and maybe provide some assistance on this so that directors aren't simply relying on me for it. I want to be sure that I'm stating what you've told me very clearly. So you can now correct anything I've done wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to see there's nothing to correct. You've stated it well, and between Ms. DeMarco and myself, we'll handle the process. But again, what the municipal councils, the process that they choose to utilize, looking at whether or not they're going to accept or not accept the regional growth strategy is entirely up to them. I'm not quite sure how to give you guidance on what you're going to accept to hear in your municipal councils. Maybe Ms. DeMarco can help me out here in terms of if they're speaking about the regional growth strategy versus speaking about your own part of it. I'm not quite sure.
Thank you. My understanding is that they can accept any aspect of the region.
Thank you.
I'd be inclined as mayor to not want to hear matters that weren't relevant to the decision that we were making within our own municipality. But, I wouldn't want to hear about what's happening in Langley in relation to my consideration of the issue in Burnaby. And there would have to be some sort of relationship that's provided for me to include that in our discussions. But that's up to each individual council. If you want someone to come in with a delegation telling you about what's happening in Langley, go ahead, but I'm sure that your time can be better utilized to consider the issues in your individual municipality, and most of us will have enough in relation to that. So, you're not being told you can't hear that, but I'm sure you'll exercise your own discretion as to what's relevant to the decision you're making.
I think time listening about Langley is always listening. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with listening to things about it. Does that clarify? Is there any other questions? Because we want to be sure. Have we clarified enough to you, Director Reimer, that?
Yes, I think I'm sorry. I don't know why, but we did not do for a second reading process in Vancouver. We sort of bundled it all together right at the end. So
Well, you're under the Vancouver Charter, so you have different rules than the rest of us. We all operate.
I
There are
sort
pretty
of-
similar sets of rules.
When we all put up our hands or not the other week, I just assumed that was it, and we were on to ratification, so I appreciate the.
You can't stop, and my counselors have always told me, you can't stop someone who's a citizen from talking to you at the video store about something that's important to them. I mean, that's just not realistic to expect. What you do want is for the counselor to say, this is after the public hearing, I don't want to discuss this issue, but you don't want to be rude either. So it's difficult to walk that line. But I've always been told by our clerk, the idea is to not have us receive any further delegations as a group. And so any formal process for us to receive those delegations. And I think all of us encourage our counselors not to get involved in sidebars, because that really does defeat the purpose of us remaining untainted by further submissions. Yes, Director Stewart.
And you did explain it, I think, quite well. I do want to make the point again, though, that this is not our rules. This is not a line that was drawn by us, but rather by jurisprudence. It's just that the courts have drawn this line. It's a line that many of us feel is unreasonable.